When you open your eyes in a body that cannot move, what would you do? Powerful CEO Victoria Hale wakes up after a horrific accident, but no one knows she is fully conscious. Lying still, she decides to listen, and what she discovers will shake her entire empire. In silence, the truth about loyalty, betrayal, and power begins to emerge. Follow this story to the end, hit like, and comment about the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled. Now, let's begin. The headlights came out of nowhere. Victoria Hale saw them in her peripheral vision, two white circles expanding like twin suns, and in the half-second before impact, her brain registered three things. The steering wheel was useless, the brakes weren't catching, and she was about to die on a Thursday. She didn't scream. Screaming had never solved anything. The Mercedes hit the guardrail at 60 miles per hour, and the world became a carousel of glass and metal and sound. Victoria felt her body fold in ways it wasn't designed to fold. Then everything went silent and dark. When she opened her eyes again, she couldn't move. Not her arms, not her legs, not even her fingers. She tried to speak, but her throat produced nothing. No sound, no air, nothing. Panic clawed at her chest from the inside. Her heart was racing. She could feel it hammering against her ribs, but the rest of her body was stone. The ceiling above her was white tile with fluorescent panels. Hospital. She was in a hospital. The smell confirmed it, antiseptic and floor wax and something vaguely human underneath. A machine beeped beside her, slow, steady. Her pulse, probably. Footsteps approached from somewhere to her left. Victoria tried to turn her head, but it wouldn't obey. A woman in green scrubs leaned into her field of vision, checked something on a monitor, then walked away without looking at her face. "I'm awake," Victoria wanted to scream. "I'm right here," but her body was a prison. She didn't know how long she lay there before the doctor came. Time felt strange, elastic. Minutes could have been hours. The doctor was a man in his 50s with graying temples and the kind of steady voice people use when delivering bad news. "Mrs. Hale is stable," he said. Not to her, to someone else in the room. But the scans show significant trauma to the brainstem. We're seeing no response to stimuli. Pupils are fixed. At this stage, we have to classify this as a deep coma. Coma. Victoria's mind reeled. She wasn't in a coma. She was right here, listening to every word, thinking clearly, feeling the scratch of the hospital gown against her skin. "Is there any chance she'll wake up?" A woman's voice. Young, uncertain. "It's too early to say," the doctor replied. "We'll monitor her closely over the next 72 hours. But you should prepare for the possibility that she may not regain consciousness." "I'm conscious right now, you idiot." But her mouth wouldn't move, her eyes wouldn't blink. She was a ghost in her own body. The young woman, a nurse, Victoria assumed, asked something else, but Victoria's mind was already racing past the conversation. If they thought she was in a coma, that meant they weren't trying to wake her. That meant no one knew she could hear them. A strange thought occurred to her then, sharp and cold. What if I don't tell them? She'd spent 20 years building Hale Industries from a mid-tier investment firm into a powerhouse worth $3 billion. She'd done it through control, precision, and knowing exactly who to trust. Except trust had always been a calculation, not a certainty. People were loyal when it benefited them. She knew that. She'd built her empire on that knowledge. But what happened when the benefit disappeared? What happened when Victoria Hale was no longer the woman signing their checks, approving their promotions, deciding their futures? What would they say when they thought she couldn't hear? The idea settled over her like a cold wind. "I'll wait," she decided. "I'll listen." And so she did. The first 24 hours were medical. Doctors, nurses, tests. They moved her body like furniture, adjusting her position, checking her vitals, inserting tubes. Victoria learned quickly that her hearing was sharp, but her vision was limited to whatever fell directly in front of her eyes. She couldn't turn her head, couldn't shift her gaze. If someone stood to her left or right, they ceased to exist. She memorized the ceiling tiles, 36 of them in a 6x6 grid. One had a watermark in the corner. By the second day, the visitors started arriving. The first was Charlotte Reeve, Hale Industries' chief operating officer. Charlotte had been with the company for 8 years, hired personally by Victoria after poaching her from a competitor. She was brilliant with numbers, ruthless in negotiations, and utterly dependable. Or so Victoria had thought. Charlotte appeared in her field of vision, looking down at her with an expression that might have been concern. She was dressed in a charcoal suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Victoria," Charlotte said softly, "I don't know if you can hear me, but I wanted you to know that we're handling everything. The company is in good hands." A pause. Charlotte glanced toward the door, then back. "The board is concerned, of course. We're in the middle of the Meridian acquisition, and without you to finalize the terms," she trailed off. "We'll manage. Don't worry. Don't worry." The phrase lingered in the air like smoke. Charlotte stayed for 10 minutes, speaking in careful, measured tones about quarterly projections and investor confidence. She never touched Victoria's hand. She never asked the doctors about recovery timelines. When she left, her heels clicked against the linoleum with the same brisk efficiency she brought to board meetings. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. Not quite anger, not yet. The second visitor was Marcus Thorne, the company's chief financial officer. Marcus was 42, ambitious, and constantly angling for Charlotte's position. He'd been with Hale Industries for 5 years, and Victoria had always kept him at arm's length, useful, but not trustworthy. He confirmed her instincts within 30 seconds. "Jesus, Vic," he muttered, standing at the foot of her bed. He didn't come closer. What a mess. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, then shoved it back in his pocket. "Look, I don't know if you're in there or not, but I'm going to be straight with you. The board is panicking. Charlotte's trying to hold things together, but without you making decisions, we're dead in the water. Meridian is already getting cold feet." He ran a hand through his hair. "Victor's been in my office twice today talking about contingency plans. I think he's going to make a move, probably try to push through some kind of temporary leadership structure, which, no offense, but you being a vegetable doesn't exactly help." Vegetable. Victoria would have flinched if her body allowed it. Marcus stayed for less than 5 minutes. Before he left, he glanced at her one last time and shook his head. "Damn shame," he said. Then he was gone. By the third day, Victoria had a clearer picture. The board was fracturing. Without her at the helm, Hale Industries was a ship without a captain, and the crew was already fighting over the wheel. Charlotte was trying to maintain order, but Marcus was positioning himself for a power grab. And Victor Lang, the name Marcus had mentioned, was clearly orchestrating something in the background. Victor Lang. Even the thought of him made Victoria's blood simmer. He was the board's longest-serving member, a silver-haired snake who'd been trying to undermine her for years. He had money, connections, and a smile that could sell poison as medicine. Victoria had kept him on the board because he was too dangerous to push out entirely, but she'd never trusted him. Now lying helpless in a hospital bed, she wondered if that had been a mistake. The thought was interrupted by a new voice. "Ms. Hale?" It was different from the others, quieter, uncertain. A man stepped into her line of sight. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair, slightly rumpled. He wore slacks and a button-down shirt that looked like it had been ironed in a hurry. His eyes were brown and tired. Daniel Cross. Victoria recognized him immediately, though it took her a moment to place him. He was her executive assistant, quiet, efficient, forgettable in the way good assistants were supposed to be. He handled her schedule, managed her calls, kept her coffee cup full. She'd hired him 2 years ago after his predecessor quit without notice. She realized, with a pang of something uncomfortably close to shame, that she didn't know much about him beyond that. Daniel stood beside her bed, hands clasped in front of him like he wasn't sure what to do with them. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said. His voice was low, careful. "The doctor said you probably can't, but I thought I'd come anyway." He pulled up a chair and sat down. Not at the foot of the bed like Marcus. Right beside her, close enough that she could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. "I heard about the accident," he continued. "I'm sorry. That's a stupid thing to say, I know. But I am." A pause. He rubbed the back of his neck. "They're saying you might not wake up. I don't know if that's true. I hope it's not." There was something in his tone that caught Victoria off guard. It wasn't pity. It wasn't the practiced sympathy of her board members. It was something softer, more real. "I wanted to thank you," Daniel said quietly. "I don't think I ever did that properly." Victoria's mind flickered with confusion. Thank her? For what? 2 years ago, when you hired me, I was... He stopped, choosing his words carefully. I was in a bad place. My wife had just died. Cancer. It was fast, and it was brutal, and it left me and my daughter completely wrecked. I couldn't hold down a job, couldn't focus. I was barely keeping it together. He looked down at his hands. Every interview I went to, I could see it in their eyes. They didn't want someone broken. They wanted someone sharp, reliable, put together. And I wasn't any of those things. Victoria remembered the interview now. She'd been distracted that day, running late for a meeting. She'd glanced at his resume, asked 3 questions, and hired him on the spot because her last assistant had left her schedule in chaos and she needed someone immediately. She hadn't hired him out of kindness. She'd hired him out of necessity. But Daniel didn't know that. You didn't ask me about the gap in my employment, he said. You didn't push when I said I had personal responsibilities. You just gave me the job. And that job saved me. It gave me structure, stability, a reason to get up in the morning. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So thank you. Even if you can't hear this. Thank you. He sat there for a while longer, not saying anything, just sitting. When he finally stood to leave, he hesitated, then reached out and gently adjusted the blanket that had slipped down near her shoulder. I hope you wake up, he said softly. I really do. Then he left. Victoria stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to make sense of what she'd just heard. She'd been so focused on the board, on the betrayals she'd expected, that she hadn't considered the people she'd overlooked. Daniel Cross had worked for her for 2 years, and she couldn't remember a single personal conversation they'd had. She didn't know his daughter's name. She didn't know his wife had died. She'd seen him as a function, not a person. And now he was the only one who'd spoken to her like she was still human. The visits continued. Charlotte came back on the 4th day, this time with Victor Lang. Victoria's pulse kicked up when she saw him. Even now, even like this, the sight of that man made her want to spit nails. Victor was in his 60s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His hair was silver and perfectly styled, his smile warm and practiced. He looked like someone's kindly grandfather. He was anything but. Poor Victoria, Victor said, standing at the foot of her bed. His voice dripped with false sympathy. Such a tragic accident. Charlotte stood beside him, arms crossed. The doctors say there's no brain activity. Unfortunate, Victor said, but perhaps inevitable. Victoria pushed herself too hard. We all saw it, the stress, the long hours. It was only a matter of time before something gave. Liar. We need to discuss next steps, Charlotte said. She sounded uneasy. The board is getting restless. Meridian wants answers we can't give them. Victor nodded slowly. Then we'll have to provide answers, with or without Victoria. Charlotte frowned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Victor said smoothly, that we convene an emergency board meeting, declare Victoria incapacitated, install interim leadership. It's the only way to keep the company stable. That's a hostile move, Victor. She's not dead. She's not conscious either. Victor's smile didn't waver. And if she does wake up, which, let's be honest, seems unlikely, she'll understand that we did what was necessary. She built this company. She wouldn't want it to crumble because of her condition. Charlotte was silent for a moment. Who would you suggest for interim CEO? I think that's obvious, Victor said. You. You're the COO. You know the company inside and out. You have the board's respect. And you? Charlotte asked, her tone guarded. I'd be happy to serve as acting chairman. Purely temporary, of course, just until Victoria recovers. Or, he paused delicately, until other arrangements can be made. Other arrangements. The phrase was a knife wrapped in silk. Charlotte looked down at Victoria, her expression unreadable. I'll think about it, she said finally. Don't think too long, Victor replied. The company won't wait. They left together, their voices fading down the hallway. Victoria felt the rage building in her chest like a furnace. Victor was making his move. She'd known he would eventually, but she'd always assumed she'd be there to stop him. Now she was trapped in her own body, helpless, while he dismantled everything she'd built. And Charlotte was actually considering it. The woman Victoria had mentored, promoted, trusted, was standing on the edge of betrayal, and she didn't even seem conflicted. The fury burned hotter. Over the next few days, the hospital room became a theater of deception. Board members came and went, each one offering hollow sympathies before discussing business as if she weren't there. Marcus stopped by to complain about Charlotte's leadership style. Another board member, Ellen Travers, spent 10 minutes on her phone negotiating a deal Victoria knew nothing about. A third, Brian Moss, openly speculated about whether her shares would be redistributed if she didn't recover. They spoke about her, around her, never to her. It was like being erased one conversation at a time. But Daniel came back. He visited every evening after work, always between 6 and 7. He never stayed long, 15, 20 minutes at most, but he came. And he talked. Not about business, not about the company. He talked about small things. His daughter's science project, a book he was reading, the weather. Once he mentioned that he'd fixed the coffee maker in the break room because it had been driving him crazy for weeks. "I know you can't hear this," he said one evening, sitting in the same chair as always. "But it helps me to talk. I hope that's okay." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "The board's been calling me," he admitted, "asking questions about your schedule, your meetings, your files. They're looking for something, but they won't tell me what." He looked at her, his expression troubled. "Charlotte cornered me yesterday. She wanted me to sign some kind of statement. Said it was routine, just confirming your state of mind before the accident. But the way she phrased it, it felt off, like she was trying to build a case for something." He rubbed his temples. "I didn't sign it," he said quietly. "I told her I needed to think about it. She didn't like that." Victoria's heart clenched. She wanted to scream at him to run, to quit, to get as far away from Hale Industries as possible before Victor and Charlotte dragged him into their scheme. But she couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but listen. "I don't know what's happening," Daniel said, "but I don't like it, and I don't trust them." He stood up, hesitated, then reached out and briefly touched her hand. His palm was warm against her cold fingers. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said. Then he was gone. Victoria stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside her. Daniel Cross was loyal, not because she paid him well or because she held power over his career. He was loyal because, somehow, inexplicably, he thought she deserved it. She didn't, but he believed it anyway, and that belief might be the only thing standing between her and Victor's coup. On the 7th day, everything changed. Victor called an emergency board meeting. Victoria knew because Charlotte stopped by to tell her. Not that Charlotte thought she could hear, but because she seemed to need to justify herself out loud. "We're voting tonight," Charlotte said, standing at the foot of the bed. Her arms were crossed, her posture defensive. "Victor thinks it's time. The company can't function without leadership, and you're not—" She stopped herself. "You're not coming back," she finished quietly. "The doctor said as much. Even if you wake up, the recovery time would be months, maybe longer. We can't wait that long." Victoria screamed silently. "I'm sorry," Charlotte said, and for the first time she sounded like she meant it. "I know this isn't what you would have wanted, but Victor's right. The company needs stability. And if I don't step up, someone worse will." She left without looking back. Victoria's mind raced. The board meeting was tonight. That meant Victor would push through the vote to declare her incapacitated, install Charlotte as interim CEO, and seize control himself as acting chairman. Once that happened, it would be nearly impossible to undo. Victor would consolidate power, push out anyone who opposed him, and strip Hale Industries down to its bones for profit. She had to stop it. But how? She couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink in Morse code. Her body was a cage, and the key was somewhere she couldn't reach. Hours passed. The sunlight outside her window faded to orange, then gray, then black. She was running out of time. And then she heard footsteps, faster than usual, almost frantic. Daniel appeared in her field of vision, his face flushed. He looked like he'd been running. "Ms. Hale," he said breathlessly, "I don't know if you can hear me, but I have to tell you something." He pulled the chair close and sat down hard. "The board's voting tonight to remove you. Victor convinced them that you're not coming back. Charlotte's going along with it. Marcus, Ellen, Brian, all of them. They think it's over. His hands clenched into fists on his knees. Victor came to me this afternoon. He said if I didn't sign a statement saying you were mentally unstable before the accident, he'd have me fired. He said he'd make sure I never worked in this city again. He threatened my daughter's school, her future, everything. Daniel's voice cracked. I told him no. Victoria's heart stopped. I told him to go to hell, Daniel continued, his voice shaking with anger. I don't care what he does to me. I won't lie about you. I won't help him destroy what you built. He looked at her, his eyes desperate. I know you can't hear me, he said. I know you're not in there. But I needed to say it out loud. I needed to tell someone. He dropped his head into his hands. I don't know what to do, he whispered. I can't stop them. I can't. Move. The thought was a lightning bolt through Victoria's brain. Move. Do something. Anything. She focused every ounce of willpower she had into her right hand, the hand Daniel had touched, the hand that was closest to his. Move. Nothing. Move. Still nothing. Daniel stood up slowly, wiping his eyes. I should go, he said. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have dumped all this on you. He turned to leave. Move. And her finger twitched. It was barely anything. A spasm, maybe. A trick of the light. But it happened. Daniel froze. He turned back slowly, his eyes locked on her hand. Ms. Hale? Victoria screamed inside her head. Again. Do it again. She focused everything, every thought, every bit of rage and desperation and sheer stubborn will into that single finger. It twitched again. Daniel's breath caught. He leaned closer, staring at her hand like it was a miracle. Oh my God, he whispered. You're in there. You're awake. Victoria's finger twitched a third time. Daniel grabbed her hand gently, his eyes wide. Can you hear me? He asked. If you can hear me, move your finger again. She did. Jesus, Daniel breathed. Okay, you're awake, you're conscious. They don't know, nobody knows. He looked at her face, and for the first time in a week, someone saw her. How long have you been awake? He asked. Then he shook his head. No, that doesn't matter. What matters is stopping them. The vote's in 2 hours. If Victor gets control... Victoria's finger twitched frantically. Daniel understood. You want to stop them, he said. It wasn't a question. Another twitch. But you can't move. You can't speak. He thought for a moment, his mind racing. Can you do anything else? Blink? Move your eyes? Victoria tried. She focused on her eyelids, willing them to respond. Nothing. Just the finger. Okay, Daniel said. He was thinking out loud now, pacing. Okay, the board's meeting at the office in 2 hours. If you could just show them, if you could prove you're conscious... He stopped. But you can't get there, and even if you could, one finger twitch isn't going to convince them. They'd call it a reflex. Victor would spin it. Victoria's frustration burned white hot. He was right. A single finger movement wouldn't be enough. She needed more. She needed her voice, her body, her power. But she had none of those things. All she had was Daniel. He knelt beside the bed, his face level with hers. Tell me what to do, he said quietly. I'll do whatever you need. Just tell me. Victoria stared at the ceiling and thought. She had 2 hours. 2 hours to reclaim her company, her life, her power. 2 hours to turn one twitching finger into a weapon. She didn't know if it was possible. But she'd built an empire from nothing. She'd turned a failing investment firm into a $3 billion titan through sheer force of will. If anyone could do the impossible, it was her. Her finger twitched. Daniel understood. All right, he said, standing up. Let's burn this thing down. Daniel's mind was already moving faster than his feet. He grabbed his phone from his pocket, checked the time, 6:43, and cursed under his breath. The board meeting started at 8:30. That gave him less than 2 hours to figure out how to get Victoria from a hospital bed to the Hale Industries boardroom without anyone knowing she was conscious. Okay, he said, turning back to her. First things first. We need to get you out of here, but if I just wheel you out the front door, they'll stop me. Hospital protocol, doctor's orders, all of that. Victoria's finger twitched once. Agreement. So we need a distraction, or a really good lie. He paced to the window, looked out at the parking lot below, then back at her. Can you move anything else? Even a little? She tried. Focused hard on her left hand, her toes, her jaw. Nothing responded except that one finger on her right hand. Her finger twitched twice. No. Daniel nodded, processing. One finger. That's what we've got. He pulled the chair closer again and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. All right, here's what I'm thinking. I tell the nurses I'm taking you for a scan, something routine. I've been coming here every day. They know me. They might not question it. Victoria's finger twitched once. But we'll need a wheelchair, and I'll need to move fast once we're out of this room because the second someone checks with the nurses' station, they'll know I'm lying. He ran a hand through his hair. This is insane, you know that, right? Her finger twitched again. She wasn't sure if it meant yes or if it meant keep going, but Daniel seemed to understand anyway. Insane it is, he muttered. He stood up, checked the hallway through the small window in the door, then turned back to her. I'm going to find a wheelchair. When I come back, we're moving. No second chances. You ready? One twitch. Daniel took a breath, steadied himself, and walked out. Victoria stared at the ceiling and tried to slow her racing pulse. She'd spent 7 days locked inside her own body, listening to vultures circle her company, and now she was about to attempt the most reckless thing she'd done since she'd bet her entire savings on a failing tech startup 15 years ago. That bet had paid off. She'd made her first $1 million from it. This one had to pay off too. Minutes crawled by. She counted the ceiling tiles again, then the beeps of the heart monitor. 37 beeps before Daniel returned, pushing a wheelchair ahead of him. He looked nervous but determined. Found one in the hallway, he said quietly, positioning it beside the bed. No one saw me take it, I think. He moved quickly, disconnecting the monitor leads from her chest. The machine flatlined immediately, shrieking an alarm that made Victoria's non-existent stomach drop. Damn it! Daniel hissed. He fumbled with the machine, found the power button, and shut it off. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Someone definitely heard that, he said. We need to move now. He slid one arm under her shoulders, the other under her knees, and lifted. Victoria felt the strange sensation of her body moving without her permission, like she was a passenger in a car someone else was driving. Daniel wasn't particularly strong, and she felt him strain under her weight as he maneuvered her into the wheelchair. Sorry, he muttered, adjusting her so she wouldn't slide out. I'm trying not to drop you. Footsteps in the hallway. Fast. Daniel threw a blanket over her lap, grabbed the handles of the wheelchair, and pushed her toward the door just as a nurse appeared. What's going on? The nurse asked, her eyes sharp. The monitor. She needs a scan, Daniel said, his voice remarkably steady. Radiology called. They said it was urgent. The nurse frowned. I didn't get any orders for a scan. Check with Dr. Brennan, Daniel said, already moving past her. He ordered it an hour ago. Wait. But Daniel was already pushing Victoria down the hallway, moving fast enough to look purposeful, but not so fast that it screamed panic. Victoria's head lolled to one side, her field of vision tilting sideways. She saw the nurse pull out a phone, heard her say something sharp into it. She's calling it in, Daniel said under his breath. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they lock down the exits. He turned a corner, pushed through a door marked stairs, and suddenly they were in a concrete stairwell that smelled like paint and old coffee. Daniel pulled the wheelchair backward, tilting it so the front wheels lifted off the ground, and started down the stairs one step at a time. Each jolt sent a shockwave through Victoria's immobile body. I'm sorry, Daniel said again, breathless. I know this isn't comfortable. They reached the ground floor. Daniel pushed through another door, and they were in a different hallway, this one quieter. He moved quickly, navigating turns like he'd memorized the layout. I walked this route 3 times yesterday, he said, answering a question Victoria couldn't ask. Just in case. Just in case. He'd been planning for this. Not the escape maybe, but something. He'd been preparing to fight back even when he thought she was gone. They reached a side exit. Daniel shoved the door open with his shoulder, and they spilled out into the cool evening air. The parking lot was half empty, lit by flickering overhead lights that made everything look washed out and surreal. My car's over there, Daniel said, nodding toward a beat-up sedan in the far corner. He pushed the wheelchair across the asphalt, wheels rattling over every crack and pebble. Behind them, Victoria heard shouting. Someone had found the empty room. "Almost there," Daniel said. His voice was tight. They reached the car. Daniel unlocked it, opened the passenger door, and then paused. He looked at Victoria, then at the car, then back at her. "This is going to be awkward," he said. He lifted her again, grunting with effort, and maneuvered her into the passenger seat. Her head fell against the headrest, her body slumping like a broken doll. Daniel fastened the seatbelt across her chest, adjusted her arms so they wouldn't slide off her lap, then shut the door and sprinted around to the driver's side. The engine turned over on the third try. Daniel threw the car into reverse, tires squealing as he backed out of the space. "Come on," he muttered to the car. "Don't fail me now." They pulled out of the parking lot just as two security guards emerged from the side exit, shouting and pointing. Daniel didn't slow down. They merged onto the main road, the hospital disappearing in the rearview mirror. Daniel's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel, his breathing ragged. "Okay," he said. "Okay. We did it. We're out." Victoria's finger twitched against her leg. Daniel glanced at her, then back at the road. "Yeah," he said. "I know. That was the easy part." They drove in silence for a few minutes. The city lights blurred past the window, streaks of white and red and gold. Victoria tried to orient herself, but her vision was limited to what was directly in front of her. She saw the dashboard, the windshield, the road ahead. Everything else was guesswork. "The board meeting's at the office," Daniel said, thinking out loud. "8th floor, main conference room. Victor always uses that one for important votes. Makes him feel powerful." He turned onto a side street, checking his mirrors. "Here's the problem," he continued. "Even if we get you there, even if we get you into that room, you still can't talk. You can barely move. How do we prove you're conscious? How do we make them see you?" Victoria's mind raced. He was right. A twitching finger wouldn't be enough. Victor would call it a muscle spasm, a neurological fluke, anything to discredit it. She needed something undeniable, something that screamed presence, awareness, intent. But what? "We need a doctor," Daniel said suddenly. "Someone who can verify that you're awake. Someone the board would believe." Victoria's finger twitched twice. No. There wasn't time to find a doctor, convince them, bring them to the office. The vote would be over before they got halfway there. "Then what?" Daniel asked. Frustration crept into his voice. "I can't just wheel you in there and hope they notice. Victor will have you removed before you can—" He stopped. "Wait," he said slowly. "What if that's exactly what we do?" Victoria's finger twitched. Confusion. "Think about it," Daniel said, his voice picking up speed. "Victor's expecting to walk into that meeting unopposed. He thinks you're in a coma. He thinks no one's going to fight back. So what if you just show up?" He glanced at her. "You don't need to talk. You don't need to move. You just need to be there. In that room. Alive. Awake. Looking right at them." Victoria's mind turned the idea over. It was risky. If they didn't believe her, if Victor spun it the right way, it could backfire completely. But Daniel was right about one thing. Showing up was a move Victor wouldn't expect. And in her experience, the best way to win a fight was to do the one thing your opponent thought was impossible. Her finger twitched once. "All right," Daniel said. He sounded almost relieved to have a plan, even a half-formed one. "Then we're doing this." They drove through the city, weaving through traffic. Daniel checked his phone at a red light. 7:26. They had just over an hour. "We'll go in through the service entrance," Daniel said. "Loading dock in the back. Security's lighter there, and I've got a key card." Victoria had never been to the loading dock in her life. She hadn't even known there was a service entrance. But Daniel navigated the streets like he'd done this before, turning down alleys and side roads she didn't recognize. "I used to take breaks back there," he explained, as if reading her mind. "When things got overwhelming, it's quieter." They pulled into a narrow alley behind the Hale Industries building. The loading dock was exactly as Daniel described, a concrete platform with a rusted metal door and a flickering light above it. Daniel parked, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in the silence. "Last chance to back out," he said quietly. Victoria's finger twitched. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, didn't think so." He got out. came around to her side and opened the door. The night air was cooler now, carrying the smell of asphalt and exhaust. He unbuckled her seatbelt and lifted her again, grunting. "I really need to start going to the gym," he muttered. There was no wheelchair this time. He carried her across the loading dock, propped her against the wall with one arm while he swiped his keycard with the other. The lock clicked. The door opened. Inside, the building was dim and quiet. The service corridors were utilitarian, all exposed pipes and concrete floors. Daniel moved quickly, navigating turns and stairwells. Victoria's head bounced against his shoulder with each step. "Almost there," he said. They reached the 8th floor. Daniel pushed through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, and suddenly they were in familiar territory. The executive wing. Polished floors, recessed lighting, framed photos of the company's milestones on the walls. Daniel paused, listening. Voices. Distant, but distinct. Coming from the main conference room. "They're already in there," Daniel whispered. He carried Victoria down the hallway, moving as quietly as he could. The voices grew louder. Victoria recognized them now. Victor's smooth baritone, Charlotte's clipped tone, Marcus laughing at something. Daniel stopped outside the conference room door. Through the frosted glass, Victoria could see shapes moving, figures seated around the long table. "Okay," Daniel said. His voice was shaking now. "Here we go." He shifted Victoria's weight, freeing one hand to reach for the door handle, and then he stopped. "Wait," he said. "If I walk in there carrying you, they'll think I'm holding you hostage or something. We need—" He looked around, spotted a chair against the wall, and made a decision. He set Victoria down in the chair, positioning her so she was upright, her hands in her lap, her head tilted forward slightly, chin toward her chest. "You look like you're asleep," Daniel said. "But that's fine. That might actually work better." He crouched in front of her, meeting her eyes even though hers couldn't move to meet his. "When I open that door," he said, "it's going to get loud. They're going to yell. Victor's going to try to throw me out, maybe call security. But I need you to do something for me." Her finger twitched. "I need you to stay calm," Daniel said. "And when the moment's right, when everyone's looking at you, I need you to move that finger where they can see it. Can you do that?" One twitch. Daniel nodded. He stood, took a breath, and grabbed the handles of the chair. "Let's go ruin Victor's night," he said. He pushed the door open. The conference room went silent. 10 faces turned toward the door, expressions ranging from confusion to outright shock. Victor Lang sat at the head of the table, mid-sentence, his mouth still open. Charlotte was to his right, a pen frozen halfway to the notepad in front of her. Marcus, Ellen, Brian, and the other board members stared like they'd seen a ghost, because, in a way, they had. "Good evening," Daniel said. His voice was steady, but Victoria could hear the tremor underneath. "Sorry to interrupt." Victor recovered first. His expression shifted from shock to fury in the span of a heartbeat. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded, rising from his chair. "Get out, now!" "No," Daniel said simply. "You're fired," Victor snapped. "You're done. Security!" "Go ahead," Daniel said. "Call them. I'll wait." Charlotte stood up slowly, her eyes locked on Victoria. "Daniel, what is this? She's supposed to be in the hospital." "She was," Daniel said. "But she decided to attend the meeting, figured it was important." "She's in a coma," Marcus said, his voice incredulous. "She can't decide anything." "That's where you're wrong," Daniel said. He pushed the chair forward into the light. Victoria's head lolled slightly with the movement, but her eyes were open, staring blankly ahead. "She's been awake this whole time," Daniel continued, "listening, watching, hearing every single thing you people said when you thought she couldn't hear you." The room erupted. "That's impossible," Victor said. "Prove it," Ellen Travers demanded. "This is absurd," Brian Moss added. Charlotte said nothing. She was staring at Victoria, her face pale. "You want proof?" Daniel asked. He moved to stand beside Victoria's chair, one hand resting on the back of it. "Fine. Miss Hale, if you can hear me, move your right index finger." Victoria focused every ounce of will she had into that finger. It twitched. The room went silent again. "Reflex," Victor said immediately. "Muscle spasm. Happens all the time with coma patients." "Then let's try again," Daniel said. Ms. Hale, if you understand what's happening right now, move your finger twice. Victoria's finger twitched. Once. Twice. Coincidence, Victor said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Ms. Hale, Daniel continued, his voice gaining strength, if Victor Lang is trying to steal your company, move your finger 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Charlotte's pen clattered to the table. This is a trick, Victor said, but he was looking at Daniel now, not Victoria. You're manipulating her somehow, moving her hand. I'm standing 5 feet away from her, Daniel said flatly. And even if I wasn't, how would I know how many times to make her finger move unless she was actually listening? Marcus leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. Ask her something only she would know. Daniel thought for a moment. Ms. Hale, what's the name of the acquisition we were working on before your accident? If it's Meridian, move your finger once. If it's something else, move it twice. 1 twitch. Lucky guess, Victor said. Fine, Daniel said. His patience was wearing thin. Miss Hale, who's been visiting you every single day since the accident? If it's Charlotte, move once. If it's Victor, move twice. If it's me, move 3 times. 3 twitches. Ellen Travers let out a breath. Oh my God. She's awake, Charlotte whispered. No, Victor said sharply. No, this is some kind of setup. He's coached her, programmed her responses, somehow. Programmed her? Daniel's voice rose. Are you listening to yourself? I'm listening to a low-level assistant who just committed about 15 different crimes, Victor shot back. You removed a patient from a hospital without authorization. You brought her here against medical advice. You're using her condition to disrupt a legitimate board proceeding. Legitimate? Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're staging a coup. You're trying to declare her incapacitated so you can seize control of her company. I'm trying to save the company, Victor said, which is more than you're doing. Ms. Hale, Daniel said, ignoring him. Do you want Victor Lang to take control of Hale Industries? Yes or no? 1 twitch for no. 1 twitch. Do you want this vote to proceed? 1 twitch. Do you want to remain CEO of this company? Victoria's finger moved so hard it was almost a spasm. Once. Charlotte sank back into her chair. Victor, we can't proceed with this vote. She's clearly conscious. She's clearly being manipulated, Victor snapped, and I will not let this company be held hostage by some assistant with delusions of heroism. Then what do you suggest? Marcus asked. He sounded genuinely curious. I suggest we table this discussion until we can get a proper medical evaluation, Victor said. Bring in neurologists, run tests, verify that she's actually aware and not just exhibiting random motor responses. That could take days, Charlotte said. Then it takes days, Victor replied. But I will not base company policy on a parlor trick. It's not a trick, Daniel said. Prove it, Victor challenged. Make her stand up, make her talk, make her write her name. Do anything other than twitch a finger, and I'll believe you. The room waited. Victoria tried. She focused on her legs, her arms, her voice, screamed internally for her body to obey. Nothing, just the finger. Victor's smile was thin and sharp. That's what I thought. She can't move anything else yet, Daniel said desperately. But she's awake, she's aware. That has to count for something. It doesn't count for anything, Victor said. Not legally, not medically, not in any way that matters. He turned to the rest of the board. I move that we proceed with the vote as planned. Miss Hale's condition, whatever it may be, does not change the fact that this company needs leadership. Now. Seconded, Brian Moss said quietly. Charlotte looked torn. Victor, I don't know if... All in favor of declaring Victoria Hale temporarily incapacitated and installing interim leadership, Victor said, cutting her off. 3 hands went up, Victor's, Brian's, and Ellen's. Marcus hesitated, then raised his hand. 4. Charlotte stared at her hands, folded on the table in front of her. Charlotte, Victor said, your vote. She looked at Victoria, really looked at her. And for a moment, Victoria thought she saw something flicker in Charlotte's eyes. Doubt. Maybe even guilt. But when Charlotte raised her hand, it was steady. 5 votes. Motion passes, Victor said. Ms. Hale is hereby declared temporarily incapacitated. I propose myself as acting chairman and Charlotte Reeve as interim CEO, effective immediately. All in favor? The same 5 hands went up. Motion passes. Victor stood, buttoning his suit jacket. This meeting is adjourned. Daniel, I strongly suggest you return Ms. Hale to the hospital before I have you arrested for kidnapping. Daniel didn't move. You can't do this. I just did, Victor said. He walked toward the door, then paused beside Victoria's chair. He looked down at her with something that might have been pity. You should have stayed in your hospital bed, Victoria, he said quietly. At least there, you had some dignity left. He left. The other board members followed, filing out one by one. Charlotte lingered, looking like she wanted to say something, but in the end she just shook her head and walked out too. The door closed. Daniel and Victoria were alone in the conference room. For a long moment, Daniel just stood there, staring at the empty table. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. I'm sorry, he said. His voice was hollow. I really thought if they just saw you, if they knew you were awake, it would be enough. Victoria's finger twitched once. It wasn't, Daniel continued, and now I've probably made everything worse. Victor's going to have me arrested. You're going to be stuck back in that hospital, and they're going to tear apart everything you built. He put his head in his hands. I should have signed that statement, he said quietly. Maybe if I'd just played along, stayed quiet, I could have found another way to help you. But instead Victoria's finger twitched frantically. Daniel looked up. What? Another twitch. He leaned closer. Are you trying to tell me something? One twitch. Yes. Okay, Daniel said. He pulled his chair closer to hers. Okay, I'm listening. Victoria's mind raced. She couldn't speak, couldn't write, couldn't do anything except move one finger. But she'd spent 20 years building a company through strategy and precision. She'd turned impossible situations into victories before. She could do it again. She just needed Daniel to understand. Her finger twitched. You want me to do something, Daniel said. It wasn't a question, one twitch. Something to stop Victor? One twitch. But what? The vote already happened. They've already made their decision. Victoria's finger moved again, insistent. Daniel watched her hand, trying to interpret the pattern. You want me to wait? Are you spelling something? Her finger went still. No, okay, not spelling, he thought. Do you want me to get help? Call someone? One twitch. Who? A lawyer? Two twitches. No. A doctor? Two twitches. Then who? Victoria's finger twitched once, then paused, then twitched 3 more times. I don't... Daniel stopped. Wait. 1, then 3. Is that... Are you trying to give me a number? Her finger twitched once. Yes. 1, 3. 13? Is there someone on the 13th floor? 2 twitches. No. Daniel's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at it, then froze. It's a text from Charlotte, he said. She wants to meet. Says she needs to talk to me, alone. He looked at Victoria. Is that what you're trying to tell me? To meet with Charlotte? Victoria's finger twitched once. Daniel stared at his phone, then at Victoria, then back at the phone. The text from Charlotte was short, almost curt. Loading dock. 20 minutes. Come alone. She voted against you, Daniel said slowly. She sided with Victor. Why would she want to meet now? Victoria's finger twitched twice. She didn't know. But the urgency in that message, the specific location, Charlotte was choosing somewhere private, away from cameras and the rest of the board. That meant something. You think I should go? Daniel said. One twitch. And leave you here, alone? Victoria's finger moved again. Yes, she needed him to go. Charlotte had hesitated in that room. Victoria had seen it. The hand Charlotte raised to vote had been steady, but her eyes hadn't been. There was a crack there, something Daniel could exploit if he was smart about it. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. If this is a trap, if Victor sent her to stall me while he calls the police, 2 twitches. It wasn't a trap. Victoria's instincts, honed over 2 decades of reading people across negotiating tables, told her that much. Charlotte was conflicted. People who were certain didn't ask for secret meetings. All right, Daniel said finally. He stood up, checked his watch. 20 minutes. That means I need to leave now. He looked down at her. Will you be okay here? The question was almost funny. She'd been not okay for over a week. What was another 20 minutes? Her finger twitched once. Daniel hesitated at the door, his hand on the handle. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, I'm probably in a cell somewhere. Or worse. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just so you know. Then he was gone. Victoria sat alone in the conference room, staring at the empty chairs around the long table. This room had been hers once. She'd run board meetings from the head of that table, made decisions that moved markets, fired people who'd underestimated her. Now she was slumped in a chair like discarded furniture, unable to do anything but twitch one finger and hope it was enough. The silence pressed in on her. Without Daniel's voice to anchor her, the room felt cavernous and cold. She tried again to move her other hand, her arm, anything. The command went out from her brain but died somewhere in the wiring. Her body ignored her completely. Footsteps in the hallway made her pulse spike. They were coming back. Victor, probably, with security to drag her out. Or maybe the police Daniel had mentioned. But the footsteps passed by without stopping. Victoria forced herself to think. Charlotte was meeting Daniel. That was step one. But what was step two? Even if Charlotte had doubts, even if she could be convinced to switch sides, they still had the same problem. A board that had already voted, a company already in Victor's hands, and Victoria trapped in a body that barely functioned. One twitching finger wasn't going to be enough to run Hale Industries. She needed more. She needed her voice, her movement, her power back. And she needed it fast because every minute she sat here helpless was another minute Victor spent consolidating control. The door opened again. Victoria's heart jumped, but it was only Daniel returning. He looked shaken, his face pale in the fluorescent light. Charlotte talked, he said without preamble. He pulled a chair close and sat down hard. And you're not going to believe what she told me. Victoria's finger twitched. Go on. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. She knew about Victor's plan. She's known for weeks that he was positioning himself to take over. He approached her a month ago, told her you were getting reckless, making bad decisions, that the company needed new leadership before you drove it into the ground. Victoria's rage flared hot and immediate. Victor had been plotting this for weeks. While she'd been focused on the Meridian acquisition, he'd been building his coup in the shadows. Charlotte didn't believe him at first, Daniel continued. But he was smart about it. He didn't push. He just planted seeds. Made her doubt. Pointed out every small mistake you made, every decision that didn't go perfectly. And then when the accident happened, he stopped, swallowed hard. She said it felt like confirmation, like maybe Victor had been right all along, that you were burning out, losing your edge. So when he called the vote tonight, she went along with it. 2 twitches. Anger, betrayal. But here's the thing, Daniel said, and his voice picked up intensity. She didn't want to. She told me that the whole time she was sitting in that room, watching Victor take control, something felt wrong. And then when we showed up, when she saw you moving that finger, responding to questions, it broke something in her. She said she kept thinking about a meeting you had 3 years ago. Some investor was trying to lowball an acquisition, and you spent 6 hours in a room with him, refusing to back down until he met your terms. You didn't eat, didn't take a break, just sat there and outlasted him. She said that's who you were. Someone who didn't quit, didn't break, didn't let anyone take what was yours. Daniel's eyes met hers, even though hers couldn't meet his back. And she said the woman in that wheelchair tonight, the one who couldn't move or talk but was still fighting anyway, still trying to show up to her own board meeting, that was the same person. That was you. Victoria's chest tightened. She didn't want Charlotte's admiration. She wanted Charlotte's vote. She's going to help us, Daniel said. Victoria's finger went still, then twitched once, sharp. Really? She's scared, Daniel admitted. Victor has leverage on her. Some deal she made 2 years ago that wasn't exactly legal. He's been holding it over her head, threatening to expose her if she didn't cooperate. But she's more scared of what happens if she doesn't act now. She said if Victor gets full control, he'll gut the company for parts and sell it off within a year. That sounded exactly like Victor. He'd never cared about Hale Industries as an entity. He cared about the assets, the the portfolio, the stock price. To him, the company was just a collection of resources to be liquidated. So what's the plan? Daniel asked. Because Charlotte's willing to flip her vote, but it's not enough. We'd still need 2 more board members to reverse tonight's decision. And I don't see Marcus or Ellen or Brian suddenly growing a conscience. Victoria's mind raced through the options. The board had 9 members total. Victor controlled 5 votes as of tonight. Himself, Charlotte, Marcus, Ellen, and Brian. That left 4 others who hadn't been at the meeting, smaller stakeholders who rarely attended emergency sessions. If they could get Charlotte back and convince 2 of the absent members to show up and vote, they could force a re-vote. But that required something Victoria didn't have: time. Her finger twitched in a pattern Daniel had started to recognize as frustration. "I know," he said quietly. "I know it's not enough. But it's something. It's more than we had an hour ago." A noise outside the conference room made them both freeze. Voices. Multiple people. Daniel stood up quickly, moved to the door, and peered through the frosted glass. "Security," he whispered. 3 of them. And Victor. Victoria's pulse hammered. Victor had made his move. He was coming to remove her, probably to drag her back to the hospital under some pretense of medical necessity. "We need to leave," Daniel said. "Now." He grabbed the wheelchair, spun it toward the back exit, and pushed. They made it into the hallway just as the conference room door opened behind them. "There!" Victor's voice echoed off the walls. "Stop them!" Daniel ran. The wheelchair rattled over the polished floor, Victoria's head bouncing with each stride. They hit the door to the service stairs and Daniel yanked it open, pulling the wheelchair through backward. Footsteps pounded behind them. Daniel didn't try to carry her this time. He tilted the wheelchair back and let it bump down the stairs, one jarring step at a time. Victoria felt each impact in her bones, but she couldn't cry out, couldn't brace herself, could only endure it. They reached the ground floor. Daniel shoved through the exit, and they were back outside in the alley behind the building. His car was still there, waiting. "Almost there," Daniel gasped. He was breathing hard, sweat beading on his forehead. The service door burst open behind them. 2 security guards spilled out, followed by Victor. "Stop right there," one of the guards shouted. Daniel didn't stop. He wrenched open the passenger door of his car, lifted Victoria out of the wheelchair, and dumped her into the seat. Her head cracked against the doorframe and stars exploded in her vision, but Daniel was already running around to the driver's side. The engine turned over. Once, twice. "Come on," Daniel hissed. On the 3rd try, it caught. Daniel threw the car into reverse just as the security guards reached them. One of them grabbed the door handle, but Daniel was already moving. The guard stumbled, let go, and fell backward. They peeled out of the alley, tires screaming. In the rearview mirror, Victoria could see Victor standing in the middle of the alley, his face twisted with fury. They'd escaped, but barely. Daniel drove without speaking for several blocks, checking the mirrors compulsively. Finally, when it became clear no one was following them, he pulled into a parking garage and killed the engine. His hands were shaking. "That was insane," he said. "That was completely insane." Victoria's finger twitched. Agreement. Daniel laughed, but it was a broken sound, edged with hysteria. "We just ran from security. From your own company's security. And now Victor knows you're conscious, which means he's going to change tactics. He can't just declare you incapacitated anymore. He'll have to find another way to get rid of you." 2 twitches. Victoria had already considered that. Victor was adaptable. If he couldn't take the company through a board vote, he'd find another angle. Maybe a medical evaluation that declared her mentally incompetent. Maybe a lawsuit claiming she wasn't fit to serve. Maybe something worse. "We can't keep running," Daniel said. He was talking to himself now, working through the problem out loud. "Eventually he'll find us. And when he does, we'll have nothing. No leverage, no proof, no—" He stopped. "Proof," he repeated slowly. "That's what we need. Proof that you're competent, that you can still run the company." Victoria's finger twitched. "Yes, but how?" She couldn't speak, couldn't write, couldn't do any of the things that would demonstrate cognitive function to a medical examiner. "What if we don't need a medical examiner?" Daniel said. He was gaining momentum now, the fear in his voice replaced by something sharper. "What if we go public? Show the world that you're awake, that you're aware, That Victor's trying to steal your company while you're unable to defend yourself? Victoria considered it. Public pressure could work. If they could get the story out, CEO wakes from coma, fights to reclaim company from hostile board, it would generate sympathy, media attention, scrutiny. Victor would have a much harder time making his moves if cameras were watching. But it was also risky. Going public meant exposing her vulnerability, showing the world that she was damaged, limited, weak. Everything she'd built her reputation on, control, strength, precision, would be undermined by images of her slumped in a wheelchair, unable to speak. Her finger hesitated. "I know what you're thinking," Daniel said quietly. "You're thinking it makes you look weak, that it destroys the image you've spent 20 years building." One twitch. "Exactly." "But here's the thing," Daniel said. "That image is already gone. Victor destroyed it the moment he called that vote. Right now, to everyone who matters, you're either a vegetable in a hospital bed or a puppet being manipulated by your assistant. Either way, you've lost the power you had." The words stung because they were true. "So maybe," Daniel continued, "it's time to build a different kind of power. The kind that comes from people seeing you fight when you've got nothing left to fight with. That's not weakness. That's something else." Victoria's finger twitched once. Not agreement, exactly, but acknowledgement. Daniel pulled out his phone. "I know someone, a reporter. She's been trying to get an interview with you for months. Investigative journalist, works for the Times. If we give her this story," two twitches. "No, not the Times, too slow." By the time they fact-checked and published, Victor would have already moved. "Then what?" Daniel asked. "Social media? That's fast, but it's also chaos. We'd have no control over the narrative." Victoria's finger twitched in a pattern. 3 beats. Pause. 2 beats. "I don't understand," Daniel said. She tried again. Same pattern. Daniel watched her hand, frowning. "Are you trying to tell me a number? 3 and 2? 32? One twitch. "Yes." 32 what? Channel 32? Another twitch. Daniel's eyes widened. "The news. Channel 32. Local news." "Yes." Local news was fast, hungry for stories, and desperate for ratings. A CEO waking from a coma and fighting a corporate coup would be catnip for them. They'd run it immediately, probably live, without the lengthy editorial process of a major paper. "You want me to call them?" Daniel said. One twitch. "And say what? That you're awake and willing to do an interview?" One twitch. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that." He started scrolling through his phone, then stopped. "Wait. If we do this, we need to be smart about it. We need to control the setting, the questions, the framing. Otherwise, it just looks like a desperate stunt." Victoria's finger twitched twice. He was right. They needed leverage. "What if we make it a condition?" Daniel said, thinking out loud. "We'll give them the exclusive, but only if they agree to broadcast live. No editing, no delays. And we get to approve the interviewer." That could work. Live broadcast meant Victor couldn't interfere before it aired, and choosing the interviewer meant they could avoid someone who'd ask hostile questions or try to make Victoria look incompetent. Her finger twitched once. Daniel nodded and dialed. He put the phone on speaker so Victoria could hear. It rang 3 times before someone picked up. "Channel 32 news desk." A woman's voice, young and harried. "Hi," Daniel said. "My name is Daniel Cross. I'm calling about a story. It's urgent and it's exclusive." "We get a lot of urgent exclusives," the woman said, sounding bored. "What's this about?" "Victoria Hale," Daniel said. "The CEO who was in a car accident last week. The one everyone thinks is in a coma." A pause. "What about her?" "She's awake," Daniel said, "and she wants to tell her story, tonight, live." The boredom vanished from the woman's voice. "Is this a joke?" "No joke," Daniel said, "but we have conditions, live broadcasts, no delays, and we choose the interviewer. Someone fair, someone who won't grandstand." "Hold on." The line went silent, muffled voices in the background, urgent and excited. Victoria waited, her heart pounding against her ribs. The woman came back. "I'm transferring you to our night producer. Don't hang up." A click. A brief hold, and then a man's voice. "This is Ron Beckett. You're saying Victoria Hale is awake and wants to do an interview? That's right, Daniel said. And you can prove she's actually conscious? Because if this is some kind of hoax, she'll prove it herself, Daniel said. On camera, live. Another pause. Longer this time. Where are you? Ron asked. Daniel gave him the address of the parking garage. We'll send a crew, Ron said. They'll be there in 20 minutes. But I'm warning you right now, if this is fake, if you're wasting our time, I'll make sure everyone knows about it. It's not fake, Daniel said. We'll see, Ron replied and hung up. Daniel set the phone down and looked at Victoria. 20 minutes. That's all we've got to figure out how to make this work. Victoria's finger twitched. They'd figure it out. They had to. The news van arrived in 18 minutes, pulling into the parking garage with its satellite dish folded down against the roof. 2 people got out, a cameraman with equipment slung over his shoulder and a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Daniel got out of the car to meet them. Victoria watched through the windshield as he spoke with the woman, gesturing back toward the car. The woman approached, leaned down to peer through the window, and her expression shifted from skepticism to shock. She tapped on the glass. Daniel opened the door. Ms. Hale, the woman said carefully. I'm Sarah Brennan. I'm going to be interviewing you tonight. Can you hear me? Victoria's finger resting on her lap where Sarah could see it twitched once. Sarah's eyes widened. Holy hell, she muttered. It's real. Told you, Daniel said. Sarah straightened, all business now. Okay, here's how this works. We go live in 30 minutes. I'll ask questions, you respond however you can. The finger thing, that's good. That'll play on camera. But we need to establish a clear system. 1 twitch for yes, 2 for no. Can you do that? 1 twitch. Good. And if you don't understand a question or need me to rephrase, twitch 3 times. Got it? 1 twitch. Sarah nodded, then turned to the cameraman. Mike, sit up here. I want tight shots on her face and her hand. We need viewers to see every movement. Mike started unloading equipment. Sarah pulled Daniel aside, and they spoke in low voices that Victoria couldn't quite hear. Minutes ticked by. The camera was assembled, positioned, adjusted. Mike clipped a small microphone to Victoria's hospital gown, muttering apologies as he worked. Sarah ran through a sound check, asked a few test questions to make sure the finger twitch system was working, and then, suddenly, they were ready. We're going live in 60 seconds, Mike said. Sarah positioned herself beside Victoria's wheelchair, holding a microphone. She looked directly into the camera. 30 seconds. Victoria's pulse was a drumbeat in her ears. This was it. Once this interview aired, there was no taking it back. No hiding. The whole world would see her like this. Broken, limited, fighting from a position of total vulnerability. But they'd also see her fighting. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. 10 seconds, Mike said. 5, 4, 3. He counted down the last 2 numbers silently with his fingers, then pointed at Sarah. A red light on the camera flicked on. Good evening, Sarah said, her voice smooth and professional. I'm Sarah Brennan, reporting live with a story that's developing right now. 1 week ago, Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, was involved in a devastating car accident. She was declared comatose and not expected to recover. Sarah paused for effect. But tonight in an exclusive interview, we've learned that Victoria Hale is awake. She's conscious, aware, and unable to speak, but she can communicate. And she has a story to tell. The camera shifted to Victoria's face. Ms. Hale, Sarah said gently, can you hear me? Victoria's finger twitched once. For our viewers, Ms. Hale is responding by moving her right index finger. 1 movement means yes. 2 means no. 3 means she needs clarification. Sarah leaned closer. Ms. Hale, have you been conscious this entire time, since the accident? 1 twitch. And during that time, were you aware of what was happening around you? 1 twitch. Did you hear conversations that people had in your hospital room, believing you couldn't hear them? 1 twitch. Sarah's expression hardened. Ms. Hale, tonight your board of directors held an emergency meeting. Were you aware of this meeting? 1 twitch. And did they vote to remove you from your position as CEO? 1 twitch. Sharp, angry. Do you believe this vote was legitimate? Two twitches. Sarah looked directly into the camera. Tonight, the Board of Hale Industries, led by board member Victor Lang, voted to declare Victoria Hale incapacitated and install interim leadership. They did this believing she was in a coma, but as we can all see, Ms. Hale is very much aware of what's happening. She turned back to Victoria. Ms. Hale, do you want to remain CEO of Hale Industries? One twitch, fierce, unmistakable. And will you fight to reclaim your position? Victoria's finger moved so hard it lifted off her lap. Once. Sarah smiled. It was a small thing, barely there, but Victoria saw it. There you have it, Sarah said to the camera. Victoria Hale is awake, she's fighting, and this story is far from over. We'll continue to follow developments as they unfold. This is Sarah Brennan reporting live. Back to you in the studio. The red light went off. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mike lowered the camera and let out a breath. That was incredible, he said. Sarah was already on her phone. It's blowing up, she said, scrolling rapidly. Twitter, everywhere. People are sharing it, demanding answers. This is going to be huge. Daniel looked at Victoria, and for the first time since the hospital, he smiled, really smiled. You did it, he said quietly. Victoria's finger twitched once. Not yet. They'd landed the first blow, exposed Victor's play, turned public opinion in her favor. But Victor was still in control. The vote was still valid, and she was still trapped in a body that wouldn't obey her. The war wasn't over. It had barely begun. The interview went viral within an hour. Daniel sat in his car with his phone, watching the view count climb. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. The comment section was a wildfire of outrage and support, people demanding answers, calling for investigations, picking apart every second of footage. They're eating this up, he said, scrolling. Someone already made a hashtag, Justice for Victoria. It's trending. Victoria's finger twitched once. Good. Public pressure was exactly what they needed. But she also knew Victor well enough to understand that he wouldn't fold just because people were angry on the internet. He'd pivot, adapt, find a new angle. Sarah Brennan approached the car window, knocking lightly. Daniel rolled it down. You two need to disappear, she said bluntly. Victor Lang just released a statement calling this a publicity stunt. He's claiming you coerced Ms. Hale into doing the interview, that she's being manipulated, and that he's filing for an emergency court order to have her returned to medical care. That's garbage, Daniel said. I know that, you know that, but he's got lawyers and money and a board backing him up. You've got a viral video and good intentions. Sarah leaned closer. Where are you planning to go tonight? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. Then start thinking, Sarah said, because Victor's going to come after you hard. And when he does, you need to be somewhere he can't reach you. She pulled a business card from her pocket and handed it to Daniel. My personal cell. If anything happens, anything, you call me. This story isn't over, and I want to be there when it breaks wide open. Daniel took the card. Thanks. Sarah nodded and headed back to the news van. Mike was already packing up equipment, moving fast like he sensed the urgency too. Daniel looked at Victoria. She's right. We can't go back to my place. Victor probably already has people watching it, and the hospital's out of the question. Victoria's finger twitched twice. Agreed. So where do we go? Victoria thought. They needed somewhere safe, somewhere Victor wouldn't think to look, somewhere with people who might actually help them. Her mind cycled through possibilities. Hotels were too obvious, friends were too risky, most of her social circle overlapped with the board. Family was non-existent, her parents were dead and she'd never married. Her finger twitched in a pattern Daniel was starting to recognize as frustration. Okay, he said. Let me think. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. What about Charlotte? She said she wanted to help. Maybe she'd let us stay at her place. Two twitches. Too dangerous. If Victor suspected Charlotte was wavering, he'd be watching her. Then I'm out of ideas, Daniel admitted. He rubbed his face with both hands. Unless... He stopped himself. What? Victoria's finger twitched. My daughter, Daniel said slowly. She's staying with my sister right now, about 40 miles outside the city. Victor doesn't know about her. He doesn't even know I have a sister. Victoria's finger twitched once. It wasn't perfect, but it might work. You sure? Daniel asked. Because once we go there, we're dragging my family into this mess. One twitch. They didn't have a choice. Daniel nodded and started the engine. All right, but if Victor shows up at my sister's house, I'm blaming you. They drove out of the city as night deepened around them. The highway was mostly empty, just the occasional semi-truck rumbling past. Daniel kept checking the rearview mirror, paranoid that every pair of headlights belonged to someone Victor had sent. My sister's name is Rachel, Daniel said, breaking the silence. She's younger than me, teaches high school English, never liked the corporate world, said it turned people into sharks. He glanced at Victoria. No offense. Victoria's finger twitched twice. None taken. She'd spent 20 years being a shark. It was an accurate description. She's been taking care of Emma. That's my daughter, since the accident. I didn't want to uproot her, pull her out of school, disrupt her life more than it already has been. His voice went quiet. Losing her mom was hard enough. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. She'd known Daniel's wife had died. He'd mentioned it during one of his hospital visits, but hearing him talk about his daughter made it real in a way the abstract knowledge hadn't been. Emma's 7, Daniel continued. Smart kid. Too smart, sometimes. She asks questions I don't know how to answer. He smiled faintly. She wanted to know why you kept calling me at night about work stuff. I told her you were demanding. She asked if that made you mean. I said no, just focused. One twitch. Focused was a generous way to put it. Victoria had called Daniel at all hours, never considering that he might have a life outside of managing her calendar. She'd treated him like a resource, not a person with a daughter who asked questions about his boss. Rachel's going to have a lot of questions too, Daniel warned. She's protective. And she's going to want to know why I'm showing up at 11 at night with my boss who's supposed to be in a coma. Victoria's finger twitched twice. They'd figure it out. They exited the highway and wound through smaller roads past farmland and clusters of houses with porch lights glowing in the darkness. Eventually, Daniel turned onto a gravel driveway leading to a modest 2-story house with a swing set visible in the backyard. This is it, he said. Before they could even get out of the car, the front door opened and a woman stepped onto the porch. She was younger than Daniel, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun and the kind of expression that said she was already preparing to be annoyed. Danny, she called out, what the hell are you doing here? Daniel got out of the car, hands raised in a placating gesture. I know this is weird. Weird doesn't cover it, Rachel said, crossing her arms. It's almost midnight. Emma's asleep, and you look like you've been through a war. I need a favor, Daniel said. Of course you do. Rachel's eyes shifted to the car, trying to see through the windshield. Who's that? That's the favor, Daniel said. Can we come inside? I'll explain everything, but we can't stay out here. Rachel studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Fine, but this better be good. Daniel went back to the car and opened Victoria's door. Fair warning, he said quietly. Rachel's going to freak out. He lifted Victoria out of the seat, and Rachel's eyes went wide as headlights from a passing car briefly illuminated them. Is that? Rachel's voice climbed an octave. Danny, is that Victoria Hale? Yes, Joe, Daniel said, carrying Victoria toward the porch. Your boss, Victoria Hale? The one who's supposed to be in a coma? The same. Are you insane? Rachel stepped back as Daniel carried Victoria past her into the house. What are you doing with her? Why is she not in a hospital? Are you going to get arrested? Possibly, Daniel admitted. He set Victoria down on the living room couch, arranging her carefully so she wouldn't slide sideways. But it's complicated. Complicated, Rachel repeated flatly. She closed the front door and locked it, then turned to stare at both of them. Start talking. Now, Daniel explained. He told her about the accident, the coma that wasn't really a coma, the board meeting, Victor's coup. He told her about the hospital escape, the confrontation at Hale Industries, the interview that was currently setting the internet on fire. Rachel listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been grudging respect. So let me get this straight, she said when Daniel finished. You kidnapped your boss from a hospital, crashed a board meeting, ran from security, and then did a live television interview, all in one night. Technically, I didn't kidnap her, Daniel said. She wanted to leave. She can't talk, Danny. She can barely move. How do you know what she wants? Show her, Daniel said to Victoria. Victoria focused on her finger. It twitched once. Rachel's eyes widened. What was that? That means yes, Daniel explained. 1 twitch for yes, 2 for no. She's been communicating like that all night. Rachel approached the couch slowly, crouching down to Victoria's eye level. Ms. Hale, can you hear me? 1 twitch. Holy hell, Rachel breathed. You really are awake. 1 twitch. And you want to be here? You're not being held against your will? 1 twitch. Rachel sat back on her heels, processing. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I teach teenagers. Will you help us? Daniel asked. Rachel looked at her brother, then at Victoria, then at the ceiling like she was asking for divine intervention. If I say no, where will you go? I don't know, Daniel admitted. And if Victor Lang finds you? Nothing good. Rachel closed her eyes. I'm going to regret this. She stood up. Fine. You can stay, but only for tonight. Tomorrow we figure out a real plan that doesn't involve me becoming an accessory to whatever crime you've technically committed. Thank you, Daniel said. Don't thank me yet. Rachel headed toward the kitchen. I'm making coffee. Something tells me none of us are sleeping tonight. While Rachel clattered around in the kitchen, Daniel pulled out his phone and checked the news. The story had spread beyond social media now. Major outlets were picking it up, running segments with legal analysts debating the legitimacy of the board vote, medical experts discussing locked-in syndrome, business commentators speculating about Hale Industries' future. Victor just did another interview, Daniel said, reading. He's doubling down. Says you're not competent to make decisions, that the finger movements could be involuntary, that the interview was staged. Victoria's finger twitched twice. Of course he was. Victor's strategy had always been to attack credibility. If he could make people doubt what they'd seen with their own eyes, he could control the narrative. Rachel came back with 3 mugs of coffee, setting one on the table near Victoria, even though they all knew she couldn't drink it. It was a gesture of inclusion that made Victoria's chest tighten inexplicably. I've been thinking, Rachel said, sitting in an armchair across from the couch. Victor's whole argument is that you can't run a company in your condition, that you're not competent. 1 twitch. That was the core of it. So you need to prove him wrong, Rachel continued. You need to demonstrate that you can still make decisions, still think strategically, still do the job. How? Daniel asked. She can't type, can't write, can barely communicate beyond yes and no. Then we work with what we have, Rachel said. She leaned forward, her teacher instincts clearly kicking in. What if you could answer more complex questions? Not just yes or no, but actual information? Victoria's finger twitched once. She'd been thinking the same thing. The finger twitch system worked for basic communication, but it was limited. If she could find a way to convey more detailed thoughts, more nuanced strategy, it would change everything. We could use a letterboard, Rachel suggested. Point to letters, spell out words. It'd be slow, but it would work. 2 twitches. Too slow. By the time she spelled out a single sentence, the moment would be gone. Business decisions required speed, precision, the ability to respond in real time. Then what? Rachel asked, frustrated. Victoria's mind raced. She needed a system that was fast, clear, and undeniable. Something that would let her demonstrate cognitive function without requiring speech or movement beyond what she had. Her finger twitched in a pattern. Short, short, long. Short, short, long. Daniel frowned. What are you trying to say? She did it again. Same pattern. Is that Morse code? Rachel asked suddenly. 1 twitch. Yes. Morse code was exactly what she needed. It was a complete communication system based on simple binary input. Short pulses and long pulses, dots and dashes. If she could control the timing of her finger movements, she could spell out entire words, sentences, complex ideas. Do you know Morse code? Daniel asked. 2 twitches. Not yet, but she could learn. She'd learned Mandarin in 6 months to close a deal in Shanghai. She'd learned contract law from scratch to avoid hiring outside counsel. She could learn Morse code in a few hours if it meant saving her company. I'll find a tutorial, Daniel said, already pulling out his phone. We can practice tonight. By morning, you'll be able to communicate full sentences. Rachel shook her head, smiling despite herself. You two are either brilliant or completely delusional. Both, Daniel said. Definitely both. They spent the next 3 hours working. Daniel found a Morse code chart online and printed it out on Rachel's printer. He started with the basics. The letter A was dot dash. B was dash dot dot dot. C was dash dot dash dot. Victoria focused harder than she'd ever focused in her life. Each letter required precise timing, a controlled rhythm of short twitches and long twitches. At first her attempts were a mess, indistinguishable patterns that could have meant anything. But slowly, painfully, she started to get it. Dot dash. A dash dot dot dot. B. You're getting it, Daniel said, his voice tinged with amazement. Try your name. Victoria. It took her 2 minutes to spell it out, each letter a small victory. But when she finished, Daniel let out a whoop that made Rachel shush him from the kitchen. Emma's sleeping, she hissed. Sorry, Daniel whispered. He looked back at Victoria, grinning. But seriously, that was incredible. If you can do this in front of the board, if you can spell out actual strategic decisions, one twitch. Exactly. Morse code wouldn't just prove she was conscious. It would prove she was still sharp, still capable, still the woman who'd built Hale Industries from nothing. They practiced until Daniel's eyes started to glaze over from exhaustion. Rachel had fallen asleep in the armchair an hour ago, her coffee mug balanced precariously on the armrest. We should rest, Daniel said, rubbing his face. Big day tomorrow. Victoria's finger twitched twice. She couldn't rest. Every minute they wasted was another minute Victor spent consolidating power. You need sleep too, Daniel said gently. Even if your body won't let you actually sleep, you need to let your mind rest. Otherwise, you'll make mistakes tomorrow when we can't afford mistakes. He was right. Victoria hated it, but he was right. I'll take the couch in the den, Daniel said, standing and stretching. You'll be okay here? One twitch. She didn't have much choice. Daniel grabbed a blanket from the closet and draped it over Victoria, tucking it around her shoulders. The gesture was so casual, so human, that it caught her off guard. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I think you're going to win this. Victor's smart, but he's arrogant, and arrogant people make mistakes. One twitch. She hoped he was right. Daniel left, and Victoria was alone with her thoughts. The house was quiet except for the soft tick of a clock somewhere in another room, and Rachel's occasional snore from the armchair. Victoria stared at the ceiling, a different ceiling, different tiles, but the exercise was the same, and let her mind work. Victor would be planning his next move right now. The interview had hurt him, exposed him, but it hadn't stopped him. He still controlled the board. He still had legal grounds to argue that Victoria was incapacitated. And he still had resources she didn't. But Victoria had something Victor didn't understand. Desperation. She'd built everything she had through sheer force of will, through refusing to quit even when the odds were impossible. And right now, stripped of her power, her voice, her mobility, she was more desperate than she'd ever been in her life. That desperation was dangerous. It made her sharp. It made her willing to take risks Victor would never anticipate. She just needed one opening, one chance to prove she was still Victoria Hale. And when that chance came, she'd take it. Her finger twitched against her leg, practicing the rhythm. Dot, dash, dot, dash, dot, dash, 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 dot, dash, dot, dot. CLAIM. Claim what was hers. She practiced until the sky outside the window started to lighten from black to deep blue. Somewhere in the house, a door opened, and small footsteps padded down the hallway. A child appeared in the doorway. 7 years old, brown hair tangled from sleep, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters on them. Emma. She stood there for a moment, staring at Victoria with the kind of unfiltered curiosity only children had. Are you my dad's boss? She asked. Victoria's finger twitched once. Emma came closer, tilting her head. He said you're sick, but you don't look sick. You just look stuck. One twitch. That was surprisingly accurate. My mom was sick, Emma said matter-of-factly. She got stuck too. In bed. Then she died. Victoria's chest tightened. She wanted to say something, wanted to offer comfort, but she had no words to give. Emma sat down on the edge of the couch, swinging her legs. Dad says you're a fighter, that you don't give up even when things are hard. One twitch. Good, Emma said, because my dad needs people who don't give up. He gave up a lot when Mom died. I think he forgot how not to. The words hit Victoria harder than she expected. Daniel had seemed so steady, so determined throughout this entire ordeal. But Emma was right. Beneath the determination was someone who'd been broken and was still figuring out how to be whole again. Are you going to win? Emma asked. Victoria's finger twitched once. She had to. Not just for herself, but for Daniel, who'd risked everything to help her. For Charlotte, who'd found her spine at the last minute. For everyone who'd believed she was worth fighting for. Okay, Emma said. She hopped off the couch. I'm going to make Dad pancakes. He likes pancakes when he's stressed. She skipped out of the room, leaving Victoria alone again. 20 minutes later, Rachel woke up with a start, realized she'd fallen asleep in the chair, and stumbled into the kitchen where Emma was enthusiastically mixing batter and making a mess. Daniel emerged from the den looking rumpled and exhausted but determined. Today's the day, he said, pouring coffee. Victor's calling another board meeting. Charlotte texted me, 2:00. He's going to try to formalize the leadership transition, make it official before the public backlash gets worse. Victoria's finger twitched twice. They weren't letting him have that meeting unopposed. Agreed, Daniel said. So here's the plan. We show up. You demonstrate Morse code. You spell out specific strategic decisions that prove you're still competent, and we force the board to reverse their vote. It was a simple plan. Maybe too simple. But sometimes simple was all you had. Rachel came in carrying a plate of slightly burnt pancakes. You're actually going back there, to the company, where Victor can have you arrested? Yes, Daniel said. That's suicidal. Probably, Daniel agreed. He looked at Victoria. But it's also the only move we have left. One twitch. Rachel set the pancakes down with more force than necessary. Fine, but I'm coming with you. Rachel, don't argue with me, Danny. You're walking into a corporate war zone with your boss who can't defend herself. You need backup. I'm coming. Daniel looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew his sister well enough to recognize when she'd made up her mind. Fine, he said, but Emma stays here. Obviously, Rachel said. I already called Mrs. Patterson next door. She'll watch her. They ate breakfast in tense silence, each of them processing what was about to happen. Victoria couldn't eat, of course, but they put a plate in front of her anyway. Another gesture of inclusion. At noon, they loaded into Daniel's car. Rachel sat in the back, Victoria in the front passenger seat where Daniel had positioned her that morning. The drive back to the city felt longer than it had the night before, every mile weighted with anticipation. Daniel's phone rang as they hit the city limits. He put it on speaker. It's Charlotte, he said before answering. Yeah? Don't come to the office, Charlotte's voice came through, tight with urgency. Victor knows you're planning something. He's got security everywhere. If you show up, they'll arrest you on sight. We don't have a choice, Daniel said. If we don't show up, he wins by default. Then find another way, Charlotte said, because walking through the front door is suicide. She hung up. Rachel leaned forward from the back seat. She's right. You need a different approach. Victoria's finger twitched. She'd been thinking the same thing. They couldn't just walk into the boardroom like last time. Victor would be ready for that. They needed something he wouldn't expect. Her finger moved in a pattern. Dot dash dot dash D. Dash. Dash dot dash. Dash dot dash. CYCY, Daniel read. I don't understand. Victoria tried again, more carefully this time. Wait, Rachel said. Cycle? Is that it? Cycle? Two twitches. Close but not quite. Victoria focused. Dot dash dot dash. Dash dash dash. Dash dot dot dash. COUP, Daniel read. Coup. One twitch. You want us to stage a coup? Rachel asked. Against Victor's coup? A counter coup? One twitch. Exactly. How? Daniel asked. Victoria's finger moved again, faster now. She was getting better at this. The letters came quicker, smoother. Dash dot dot dot. dash 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 dot dash dot. BOOC, Daniel spelled out. No, wait, BOOK. Book? Two twitches. Board? Rachel guessed. One twitch. You want the board, Daniel said slowly. You want us to get to the board members before Victor does. One twitch. But how do we convince them to flip? Victor's got leverage on most of them. Victoria's finger moved. Dash, dash, dash. Dot. Dash, dot, dot, dot. MEB, Daniel read, frowning. Media, Rachel said suddenly. She's saying media. One twitch, Daniel's eyes widened. You want to use the media. Make this so public that the board members can't side with Victor without looking like villains. One twitch. That was exactly it. Victor's power came from operating in shadows, from private deals and quiet threats. If they dragged everything into the light, made every board member's choice visible to the world, some of them would fold. Not all of them, but maybe enough. That's risky, Rachel said. If it backfires, you're done. Victoria's finger twitched once, she knew, but risk was all she had left. Daniel pulled over to the side of the road and grabbed his phone. I'm calling Sarah Brennan. Sarah Brennan answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call, she said. I've been watching Victor's damage control all morning. He's doing interviews everywhere, spinning this as a sympathetic assistant exploiting a brain-damaged CEO. He's lying, Daniel said. I know he is. The question is, how do we prove it in a way that matters? Sarah's voice sharpened. What do you need? We need cameras, Daniel said. At the board meeting. Today at 2. They'll never let us in, Sarah said immediately. Victor will have security lock down the building. We won't get within 100 feet of that boardroom. Then we don't go to the boardroom, Daniel said. He was thinking out loud now, the plan forming as he spoke. We go to the lobby, public space. We set up there and we broadcast live. When the board members arrive, we intercept them. On camera, in front of everyone. There was a pause on the other end. That's aggressive. That's the point, Daniel said. We force them to answer questions. We make them choose sides in public, not behind closed doors. And if they refuse to talk, then the whole world sees them refuse, Daniel said. Either way, we win. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking. I can have a crew there in an hour. But Daniel, if this goes wrong, if Victor spins this the right way, you're not just destroying your career, you're destroying hers too. Daniel glanced at Victoria. Her finger twitched once. We know, he said. We're doing it anyway. All right, Sarah said. I'll see you at 1:30. Lobby of Hale Industries. Don't be late. She hung up. Rachel leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly. This is actually happening. Yeah, Daniel said. He put the car in gear and pulled back onto the road. It is. They drove in silence for a while, each of them processing what was about to unfold. Victoria's mind was already 3 steps ahead, mapping out the variables. The board had 9 members total. Victor controlled 5 as of last night. If they could flip even 2 of those 5, they could deadlock the vote. 3 would give them the majority. Charlotte was already on their side, secretly. That was 1. Marcus was a coward who followed power. If they could make Victor look weak, Marcus would jump ship. That was 2. Ellen Travers was the wild card. She was ambitious, calculating, and intensely aware of public perception. If the media circus made siding with Victor too toxic, Ellen might fold. That would be 3, enough to reverse the vote. But it all depended on pulling this off without Victor shutting them down first. They reached the Hale Industries building at 1:15. The lobby was already filling with people, employees coming back from lunch, delivery workers, a few confused tourists who'd wandered in thinking it was a different building. Sarah's news van was parked outside, satellite dish extended. Daniel pulled into the parking garage and killed the engine. Last chance to back out, he said. Victoria's finger twitched once, hard. Didn't think so, Daniel muttered. He got out and came around to her side, lifting her carefully. Rachel grabbed the wheelchair from the trunk and unfolded it. They made their way to the lobby through a side entrance, avoiding the main doors where security would be watching. Sarah was already set up near the elevators, her cameraman adjusting angles. You made it, she said, spotting them. She gestured to a spot near the center of the lobby. We'll position you here. Maximum visibility. When board members come through, we'll intercept them before they can get to the elevators. Daniel wheeled Victoria to the designated spot. People were already staring, whispering. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording. "It's starting," Rachel said quietly. Sarah clipped a microphone to Victoria's hospital gown, same as before. "We go live in 5 minutes," she said. "I'll set the scene, explain what's happening, then we wait for the board members to show up." "What if they don't come?" Daniel asked. "They'll come," Sarah said confidently. "Victor called the meeting. They have to attend or they're violating their fiduciary duties. He can't cancel it now without looking scared." Daniel nodded. His hands were shaking slightly. Rachel put a hand on his shoulder. "You've got this," she said. The cameraman gave a thumbs up. "We're live in 3, 2... The red light clicked on. "Good afternoon," Sarah said, her voice clear and professional. "This is Sarah Brennan reporting live from the lobby of Hale Industries, where a corporate showdown is about to unfold. Behind me is Victoria Hale, the CEO who was declared incapacitated just last night by her own board of directors. But as viewers saw in our exclusive interview yesterday, Ms. Hale is very much conscious and fighting to reclaim her company." She turned slightly, including Victoria in the frame. "In just moments, the board of directors will be arriving for an emergency meeting called by board member Victor Lang. Mr. Lang is attempting to formalize his takeover of the company, but Ms. Hale has a message for her board, and she's going to deliver it right here, in front of the cameras, in front of the world." The lobby was filling up now. Employees clustered near the edges, watching. More phones came out. Someone gasped and pointed. Through the main entrance, the first board member arrived. Brian Moss. Mid-50s, balding, perpetually anxious. He froze when he saw the cameras, his face going pale. "Mr. Moss," Sarah called out, striding toward him with her microphone. "Can we have a word?" Brian tried to sidestep her, heading for the elevators, but Sarah blocked his path. The cameraman followed, keeping everything in frame. "Mr. Moss, last night you voted to remove Victoria Hale from her position as CEO. Did you know at the time that she was conscious and aware?" "No comment," Brian stammered. "No comment," Sarah pressed. "The woman who built this company is sitting right there, unable to speak, and you voted to remove her without even verifying her condition. Do you stand by that vote?" Brian's eyes darted to Victoria, then to the camera, then to the growing crowd. "I did what I thought was best for the company." "Best for the company or best for Victor Lang?" "I don't have to answer these questions," Brian said, his voice rising. "This is harassment." "This is journalism," Sarah countered, "and the public deserves to know whether you're acting in the company's interests or your own." Brian's face flushed red. He pushed past Sarah and practically ran to the elevators, jabbing the button repeatedly. The crowd murmured. Phones recorded every second. Victoria's finger twitched. One down. The next to arrive was Ellen Travers. She was smarter than Brian, more composed. When she saw the cameras, she didn't freeze. She walked straight toward Sarah with a practiced smile. "Ms. Brennan," she said smoothly, "always a pleasure." "Ms. Travers, thank you for speaking with us," Sarah said, matching her tone. "Can you tell us why you voted to remove Ms. Hale last night?" "The board has a responsibility to act in the company's best interests," Ellen said. "When our CEO is incapacitated, we have to make difficult decisions." "But she's not incapacitated," Sarah said. "She's right there, conscious, aware, responding to questions." "With all due respect," Ellen said, "moving a finger is not the same as running a multi-billion-dollar company. Ms. Hale deserves our sympathy, but sympathy doesn't qualify someone to make complex business decisions." Victoria's finger moved. Fast, precise. Morse code. Dot dash dash da dash. Dash 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 dash. Dot dash dot dash. Dot dot dot. Daniel, standing beside the wheelchair, had the Morse code chart on his phone. He read it quickly. "WRONG, he said aloud. "She's spelling wrong." Ellen's smile faltered. "Ms. Hale disagrees with you," Sarah said, "and she's about to prove you wrong. Ms. Hale, can you spell out the current status of the Meridian acquisition?" Victoria's finger moved. The pattern was complex, each letter deliberate. Dash dot, dot, dot dash, dash 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 dash. DELAY, Daniel read. Dot dash dot dash. dot, dot, dot. CLI. Ellen's face went white. Dot, dash, dot. ENT. Daniel looked up. She's saying the Meridian acquisition is delayed because the client is nervous about leadership instability. Victoria's finger kept moving. Dash, dot, dash, dash, dot, 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 YISH. Dot, dot, dash, dot, dash, 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 CO, dashish, dash, 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 DO. Victoria paused, then finished. Dot, 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 dash, dot, dash. EC. Fiji. Daniel's eyes widened. She's spelling out Yishko Semiconductor. That's the client. She's saying Yishko's about to pull out because of the board's instability. Ellen stared at Victoria, her composure cracking. How could you possibly... Because she's still the CEO, Sarah said. Because she's been paying attention this whole time while you people were plotting to replace her. Ellen's jaw tightened. She looked at the camera, then at Victoria, then turned on her heel and walked toward the elevators without another word. The crowd was bigger now. People were streaming in from other floors, words spreading through the building. Victoria could hear whispers, gasps, someone saying, "This is insane," over and over. Marcus Thorne arrived next. Flanked by two other board members Victoria didn't immediately recognize. He saw the cameras and stopped dead. "Oh, hell no," he said, already backing toward the door. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah called out, "just a few questions." "Not happening," Marcus said. But the crowd had formed a semicircle now, blocking the exits. He was trapped. "You voted to remove Ms. Hale last night," Sarah said. "Do you regret that vote?" No comment. "Mr. Thorne, Ms. Hale just demonstrated detailed knowledge of an ongoing acquisition. Does that sound like someone who's incapacitated?" "I said no comment," Marcus snapped. Victoria's finger moved again, quick, angry. Dash, dot, dash, dot. Dash, dash, dash. Dot, dash, dot, dash, dot, dash. COWA, Daniel spelled out. Dot, dash, dash, dot. RD. The crowd laughed. Someone shouted, "She called you a coward!" Marcus's face turned scarlet. "This is a circus. I'm not participating in this." He tried to push through the crowd, but people pressed in with their phones, recording everything. He was drowning in scrutiny, and he knew it. "Fine," he spat. "You want a statement? Here's a statement. I voted the way I did because Victor convinced me it was the right move. But if Victoria's actually awake, if she can actually still do the job, then maybe I was wrong. Happy now?" Sarah smiled. "Very. Thank you, Mr. Thorne." Marcus shoved his way to the elevators and disappeared. Victoria's finger twitched twice. 2 down. Maybe 3 if Marcus's public admission counted as flipping. Charlotte arrived 10 minutes later and the energy in the room shifted. She walked in looking calm, collected, but Victoria could see the tension in her shoulders. Sarah approached her immediately. "Ms. Reeve, you're the interim CEO as of last night's vote. Do you still want that position?" Charlotte looked at the camera, then at Victoria. Her expression was unreadable. "No," she said simply. The lobby went silent. "No?" Sarah repeated. "No," Charlotte said more firmly. "I never wanted it. I went along with the vote because I thought it was necessary. But I was wrong." She walked over to Victoria's wheelchair and knelt down beside it. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Victoria's finger twitched once. Acceptance. "So you're withdrawing your support for Victor Lang's takeover?" Sarah asked. "Yes," Charlotte said, standing. "I'm calling for an emergency revote today, right now." The crowd erupted. People were shouting questions, talking over each other, phones recording every angle. And then the elevator doors opened and Victor Lang stepped out. The lobby fell silent again. Victor looked around at the cameras, the crowd, the chaos, and his expression didn't change. He walked toward the center of the lobby with the kind of calm that came from decades of never showing weakness. "Miss Brennan," he said pleasantly, "what a surprise to see you here." "Mr. Lang," Sarah said, "would you care to comment on the events unfolding here today?" "I'd be delighted," Victor said. He positioned himself in front of the camera, perfectly framed. What you're witnessing is a desperate attempt by a dedicated assistant to manipulate a tragic situation. Ms. Hale is ill. She needs medical care, not exploitation. Victoria's finger moved. Fast, furious, dot dash dot dash, dot dash dot, dot dash, dot dot. LIAR, Daniel read. Victor smiled. See? Simple words. A child could do that. It proves nothing. Victoria's finger didn't stop. Dot dot dash dot, dash dash dash, dot dot dash. YOU dash dot dot, dash dot dash dot. REF dot dot dash, dot 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 dot. USE dot dot, dash dash dash. DO dash, dash dash dash. TO dot dot dot, dot dot dash dot dot. SEL dot dash dot dot L. Victoria paused, making sure everyone was listening. Dash dot dash dot, dash 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 dot dash. COMP. Daniel's voice was steady as he read each letter, but Victoria could hear the triumph underneath. You refused to sell the company. You're spelling out that Victor wanted to sell Hale Industries. Victor's smile slipped. Victoria kept going. Dash, 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 dash. TO, dot, dash, dot, 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 dash. RID, dash, dot, dash, dot, dot, dash, dot, 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 dot. GES, dot, dot, dash, dot, dash, 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 dot, dot, dash. YOU, dash, 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 dashes, dash, dash, dashes, dot, dash, dot, dash. TOOK, dash, dot, dash, dot, dash, 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 dot, dash. COMP. The crowd was hanging on every letter. Dash, 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 dot, dot, dot. ON. Daniel kept reading as Victoria's finger spelled it out, letter by painstaking letter. The full story of Victor's plan. How he'd approached Charlotte weeks ago, how he'd been building leverage on board members, how his goal had never been to save the company, but to dismantle it and sell it off piece by piece to Ridge Capital, a vulture firm that specialized in hostile acquisitions. By the time Victoria finished, Victor's face had gone from composed to stone-cold furious. "This is slander," he said tightly. "It's the truth," Charlotte said, stepping forward. "I have emails, documents, everything Victoria's describing I can prove." Victor turned on her. "You're making a mistake, Charlotte." "No," Charlotte said. "I already made my mistake. I'm fixing it now." Sarah looked at the camera. "You heard it here first, folks. A corporate coup exposed in real time." Victor's jaw clenched. He looked at Victoria, and for a moment she saw something raw in his eyes. Rage, humiliation, defeat. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Victoria's finger twitched once. Actually, it was. Victor turned and walked toward the elevators. But before he could reach them, 2 security guards stepped into his path. "Mr. Lang," one of them said, "we're going to need you to come with us. There are some questions about financial irregularities the board needs you to answer." Victor stared at them. "On whose authority?" "Mine," Charlotte said. "As acting COO, I'm initiating an internal investigation into your conduct. You're suspended from the board pending the outcome." Victor's face went white. "You can't do this." "I just did," Charlotte said. The guards escorted Victor toward a side office. He didn't struggle, but the look he shot Victoria as he passed was pure venom. The lobby erupted into chaos again. Employees were cheering, phones were everywhere. Sarah was doing a recap for the camera, her voice electric with excitement. Daniel knelt beside Victoria's wheelchair. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it." Victoria's finger twitched once. Not yet. There was still the vote. Charlotte came over, looking exhausted but relieved. "I'm calling the board together now. Emergency session. We're going to reverse last night's vote and reinstate you as CEO." One twitch. "But Victoria," Charlotte said carefully, "you need medical attention, real medical attention, not just to satisfy the board, but because you deserve proper care." Victoria's finger hesitated, then twitched once. Charlotte was right. She couldn't run a company from a wheelchair, communicating in Morse code. She needed doctors, rehabilitation, time to recover if recovery was even possible. But first, she needed to finish this. The board convened 30 minutes later in the main conference room. This time, Victoria was wheeled in at the head of the table where she belonged. Charlotte sat to her right. Daniel stood behind her wheelchair, the Morse code chart still on his phone. The remaining board members filed in. Marcus looked sullen. Ellen looked wary. Brian looked like he wanted to disappear. The other members who'd missed the previous night's meeting looked confused and concerned. Charlotte called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the vote taken last night to remove Victoria Hale as CEO, she said. "Given new information and Ms. Hale's demonstrated competency, I'm calling for a re-vote." "Seconded," Marcus said immediately. He clearly wanted to be on the winning side now. "All in favor of reinstating Victoria Hale as CEO of Hale Industries?" Hands went up around the table. Charlotte's. Marcus's. 3 of the members who'd been absent the night before. Even Ellen, after a long hesitation, raised her hand. 7 votes. "Motion passes," Charlotte said. "Victoria Hale is reinstated as CEO, effective immediately." The room exhaled collectively. Victoria's finger twitched. Relief flooded through her, so intense it was almost painful. "However," Charlotte continued, "given Ms. Hale's current medical condition, I propose that I continue serving as acting COO with expanded authority to handle day-to-day operations until Ms. Hale is able to fully resume her duties. Ms. Hale, do you agree to this arrangement?" Victoria's finger twitched once. "Then it's settled," Charlotte said. She looked at Victoria, and there was something like respect in her eyes. "Welcome back." The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, some of them stopping to say awkward congratulations, others avoiding eye contact entirely. Within minutes, the conference room was empty except for Victoria, Daniel, and Charlotte. "I meant what I said earlier," Charlotte told Victoria. "I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have fought for you." One twitch. Apology accepted. "What happens now?" Daniel asked. "Now," Charlotte said, "we get her to a hospital, a real one, with neurologists who can figure out what's actually wrong and how to fix it." "And the company?" Daniel pressed. "The company will survive," Charlotte said. "It always does. But first, we take care of her." Daniel nodded. He looked down at Victoria. "You heard the woman. Time to actually get some medical help." Victoria's finger twitched twice. She didn't want to go back to a hospital, didn't want to be vulnerable and helpless again. "Not a choice," Daniel said gently. "You won. You got your company back. Now you need to get yourself back." He was right. She knew he was right. Her finger twitched once. "Fine." They wheeled her out of the conference room, through the lobby where employees stopped to watch, some of them clapping. Outside, an ambulance was waiting. Apparently Charlotte had called ahead. As the paramedics loaded Victoria into the back, Daniel climbed in beside her. "I'm coming with you," he said when she tried to protest with a finger twitch. "You're stuck with me now." Rachel appeared at the ambulance doors. "I'll follow in the car. Emma's with Mrs. Patterson until tonight." The ambulance pulled away from Hale Industries, sirens slant. Through the window, Victoria could see the building receding, her empire standing tall against the skyline. She'd fought for it, bled for it, nearly lost everything for it. And she'd won. But as the hospital came into view and the paramedics started hooking her up to monitors, Victoria realized something. Winning felt different than she'd expected. It wasn't the rush of power she remembered. It was quieter, more complicated. Because she'd won, yes, but she'd also learned things about herself she couldn't unlearn. She'd learned that power without loyalty was hollow, that control without trust was fragile, that the empire she'd built was only as strong as the people who chose to stand with her when she had nothing left to offer. And 2 people had stood with her, Daniel and Charlotte. One who owed her nothing and one who owed her everything. Both had shown up when it mattered. That was worth something, maybe more than the company itself. The hospital admitted her immediately. Within hours, she was undergoing scans, tests, consultations with specialists. A neurologist explained that she had a rare condition, a type of locked-in syndrome caused by damage to specific neural pathways. It wasn't permanent, he said. With aggressive physical therapy and time, she might regain movement, speech, full function. Might. It would take months, maybe years. There were no guarantees. Victoria's finger twitched twice when he asked if she understood the prognosis. She understood, she just didn't accept it. Recovery became her new war. Physical therapy sessions that left her exhausted and furious. Speech therapy where she had to relearn how to make sounds with vocal cords that had forgotten how to work. Occupational therapy teaching her to move fingers other than the one that had saved her life. Daniel visited every day. Sometimes he brought Emma, who would sit on the edge of Victoria's bed and chatter about school and friends and the hamster she wanted, but Rachel said was too much responsibility. Sometimes he came alone, just sitting quietly while Victoria practiced forming words or gripping a pen. "You don't have to keep coming," Victoria managed to say one afternoon, 6 weeks into her recovery. Her voice was still rough, the words slurred, but they were words. "I know," Daniel said, "but I want to." "Why?" He thought about that. "Because you gave me a job when I needed one, and because someone should be here to see you win this too." Victoria's eyes prickled. She blamed it on fatigue. Charlotte visited too, bringing reports from the company. Hale Industries had weathered the storm. The Meridian acquisition had gone through after Victoria personally called the client from her hospital bed, her voice barely audible, but her determination unmistakable. Stock prices had stabilized. The board had fallen in line. "We're thinking of expanding into renewable energy," Charlotte said during one visit. "There's a startup in San Francisco that's developing some interesting technology. I wanted your input." Victoria, sitting up in bed now with the help of pillows, considered it. "Send me the details, I'll review them." Charlotte smiled. The old Victoria would have made the decision on the spot. "The old Victoria was an idiot," Victoria said. Her words were clear now, though still slow. "The new Victoria wants to be sure." "The new Victoria," Charlotte said, "is going to be just fine." 3 months after the accident, Victoria took her first steps. They were shaky, uncertain, and she had to grip a walker so hard her knuckles went white. But she walked from one end of the physical therapy room to the other, and when she got there, Daniel and Rachel and Emma were waiting. "You did it," Emma said, beaming. "I did," Victoria agreed. Her voice was almost normal now, just a slight hesitation on certain words. 4 months after the accident, she returned to Hale Industries. Not full-time, just a few hours a day, enough to attend board meetings, review major decisions, remind everyone who was in charge. She promoted Daniel to chief of staff at the first board meeting she chaired after her return. Some of the board members grumbled about nepotism, but Victoria shut them down with a look that said she was still the woman who'd built this company and they could accept her decision or find the door. They accepted. Daniel protested, of course. Said he wasn't qualified, didn't have the experience, wasn't the right fit. "You're loyal," Victoria told him. "That's worth more than experience." "I'm also terrified," he admitted. "Good," Victoria said. "So am I. We'll figure it out together." Charlotte stayed on as COO. She and Victoria rebuilt their working relationship slowly, carefully, with a level of honesty they'd never had before. It wasn't always smooth. They argued, disagreed, sometimes had to step away from meetings to cool down. But they trusted each other now, and that made all the difference. 6 months after the accident, Victoria stood in the boardroom and looked around at the faces gathered there. Some were the same people who'd voted to remove her. Others were new, replacements she'd brought in personally. "I'm going to tell you something I've never said before," she began. Her voice was steady now, strong. "I was wrong." The room went quiet. "I built this company on the belief that power was the only thing that mattered. That if I controlled everything, if I made myself indispensable, I'd be safe. But when I lost that power, when I was lying in a hospital bed, unable to move or speak, I learned something." She paused, looking at each of them. "Power doesn't keep you safe. People do. Loyalty isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. And the strongest thing you can build isn't an empire, it's trust." She saw Charlotte nod slightly, saw Daniel, standing near the back of the room, smile. "So here's how things are going to work going forward," Victoria continued. "We're going to run this company differently, more transparency, more collaboration. I'm not going to make every decision myself, and I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers." She smiled, and it felt genuine. "But make no mistake, I'm still the CEO. I'm still in charge. And if anyone tries to take that from me again, I'll fight just as hard as I did to get it back." The room erupted in applause. Later, after the meeting ended and everyone filed out, Victoria stood alone in the conference room looking at the table where she'd once sat helpless while her board voted her out. Daniel appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" "Yeah," Victoria said. "I am." "Good speech," he said. "Very inspiring." "I meant it," she said. "I know you did." He walked over to stand beside her. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're back." "Me too," Victoria said. And she meant that too. They stood there for a moment, looking at the empty chairs, the polished table, the city visible through the windows. "What now?" Daniel asked. Victoria thought about it. 6 months ago, she would have said growth, expansion, dominance. Now, though, the answer was different. "Now," she said, "we build something better." She turned away from the table and walked out of the boardroom, Daniel falling into step beside her. Her gait was still slightly uneven, her left leg not quite as strong as her right. But she was walking, she was talking, she was here. She'd lost everything and clawed her way back. She'd been powerless and found strength anyway. She'd been betrayed and learned who to trust. And through it all, she'd survived. Not because she was perfect, not because she had all the answers, but because she'd refused to quit. As they walked through the office, employees nodded to her, some of them smiling. She nodded back, learning their names, making an effort she'd never bothered with before. "You're different," Daniel observed as they reached the elevator. "Good different or bad different?" Victoria asked. "Just different," he said. "But I think I like it." The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. "For what it's worth," Victoria said as the doors closed. "Thank you for everything. I never said that properly." "You're welcome," Daniel said. "Though technically you already thanked me by making me chief of staff and tripling my salary." "True," Victoria agreed. "But I meant it anyway." The elevator descended, carrying them down through the building Victoria had built, the empire she'd nearly lost, the life she'd fought to reclaim. And for the first time in 20 years, Victoria Hale felt something she'd forgotten how to feel. Peace. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. She still had a long recovery ahead. The company still had challenges to face. There would be more battles, more obstacles, more moments when she'd have to fight for what was hers. But she wasn't fighting alone anymore. And that made all the difference. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. Victoria stepped out into the lobby, into the light, into whatever came next. She was ready.